here. Yeah, and I'll go ahead and here and pass it to our director, Brian.
Thanks, Abraham. For the record, my name is Brian Detman, Youth Development Director for the agency, Youth Development Oregon. Really appreciate everybody being here and taking the time. Really deep appreciation to the staff and our grant managers, everyone who's contributed to this pre-application session. I think this is our third this week, so just appreciate everybody both attending and then all the work that's gone into putting this on. Maybe I'm going to just ask a quick question of Abe. Should I kind of do a quick overview of the priorities, or do we want to go through introductions and then come back to me?
If you want to do the priorities, that's fine.
I'll just hit this real quick. For those who, there are probably some of you listening in and participating who are already aware of this, but we just wanted to share real quickly up front the governor's kind of overarching priorities, just for some kind of context. These are not items that are being scored in any particular way in the application, but they're just priorities we wanted to be able to share so that for many of our past grantees who've worked in the areas of these priorities, and for those applying, that you're welcome to call out some of the work that you may be doing in the following areas that the governor has prioritized. There are three of them, as again, many of you probably already know: building more housing and reducing homelessness, improving access to mental and behavioral health and addiction services, and then also improving outcomes in early literacy and in K-12 schools. All of these areas, the education, literacy work in particular, have been the focus of YDD grant programs really since our inception. And again, we just want to acknowledge and call attention to these, but I will say it again, these are not, it's not that these items are being scored in any particular way. Just wanted to have some focus here at the beginning so that everybody was aware of those priorities as they're impacting youth and families across the state. As an applicant, you're not required to address the priorities, but again, we encourage you to consider where and how your programs and services are aligned, addressing and reducing youth homelessness, improving access to mental health and addiction services for young people, and improving educational engagement and success are all issues that can be addressed with YDD grant funds. I think as you, particularly these community investment funds, as you probably know, one or two or three of these priorities could be an aspect of your proposed work, or the focus, if that's something that your organization does. Addressing youth homelessness in particular is something we just direct you to the governor's executive order around, and I can pop a link to that in the chat if necessary. And then I'll say real quickly, while this RFA is not restricted to serving youth around the homelessness issues, we want to point out that there's a lot of flexibility in how YDD funding may be used to serve youth. Historically, YDD grantees have implemented a variety of programs to effectively support and serve young people experiencing homelessness, including some of the less visible issues such as housing instability, living in situations with multiple families, or just couch surfing. Whether your organization's mission is to provide shelter or other services to youth experiencing homelessness, or you're thinking about ways that you can better reach, that your programs can better reach and retain and support youth, we encourage you to apply and support those efforts. And if you have ideas on how you would use these grant funds to prevent or address youth homelessness, and aren't sure whether it's acceptable, whether it is an acceptable activity or service, don't hesitate to ask. We just want to remove policy barriers, make you aware of these overarching areas as much as possible. So that's my introduction. Again, deep appreciation. Thanks for being here. I'm going to turn it, I think, next to Cord to introduce himself.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cord Bucher, the Deputy Director for the Youth Development Division and Youth Development Oregon. and I will pass it over to my colleague, Molly Burns.
Good morning, everyone. Molly Burns, Re-engagement Grants Manager.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Bill Hansel. I am a grant manager, youth operations and policy analyst.
I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Abraham Magana, and I'm the community grants manager. I'm the one who will be giving the presentation today. I'll go ahead and pass it to Paul.
Good morning. My name is Paul Sell. I'm the Youth Grants and Re-engagement Systems Manager, and I'll be behind the scenes today helping with the chat. So just as Abe talked about, just please do put your questions into the chat and I'll address them periodically throughout the presentation, along with some other staff that will be aiding me on that. And again, if you can please not put it into direct message, but into the chat for everybody would be great. So with that, I will turn it over to Lawrence.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lawrence White. Youth Development Division, Youth Development Oregon. I am the Racial and Ethnic Disparities Coordinator, and I work with the Juvenile Crime Prevention Team. And with that, I'll pass it to Sally.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sally Deck, and I am the Policy Analyst and the Grant Manager for the Future Ready Oregon Youth Programs.
Good morning, all. Melissa Gallardo. I provide executive support to the Youth Development Division and also to the Youth Development Council. Jessica?
Good morning, I'm Jessica Solano. I'm an administrative specialist. I'll be helping with the Zoom as well today.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Bethany Moreland. I'm the Oregon Department of Education Procurement Specialist associated with these RFAs.
All right. And with that, I also want to just say thank you to the whole YDO team, as well as Bethany in procurement. We're able to get these RFAs out here earlier in the year, and really kind of just kudos to everyone on the team. With that, I also want to bring your attention to the bottom of the screen. Just want to let you know that statements and responses to questions addressed during the presentation are considered non-binding until published in the official question answer document as part of this RFA. Please refer to the published RFA and any addendum for official RFA information, and the RFA documents are available on our website. Let's get into it. All right, here's a couple of questions, just kind of start off some burning questions. When's RFA close? There you see it, Monday, May 1st at 5. And can my organization submit more than one YDD grant application? Yeah, you can submit multiple applications. Successful applicants will be required to document how the grants are different from each other. And as you see, they're programmatically or in our participant needs. So that is kind of the caveat there. The grant period, July 1st, 2023, all the way to June 30th, 2025, for 2 years. And how do organizations receive YDD grant funds? They're on a reimbursement basis. Grantees submit reimbursement or claim requests on a monthly or quarterly basis. Traditionally, it's on a quarterly basis, but you can also do it monthly. And what's required to submit your first claim or request for funding? You need an executed grant agreement, an approved project plan or work plan, which has been called in the past, and then making sure all your eGIMS processing, in other words, electronic grant management system, is the system we use to submit your formal request for funding, but making sure all the eGIMS processing and approvals are complete. And if you have any other questions, add them in the chat box again. And then after the presentation, all the questions must be sent to our single point of contact as instructed in the RFA. She is on the call, it's Bethany. And official answers to today's questions and the questions submitted to the single point of contact, the SPC, will be published as an addendum to this RFA, and it will be posted on our website. All right, a little bit of background here on the YDO mission, vision, and values. There you can see our mission. I'm not going to go ahead and read through it. And our vision. What I will bring your attention to is our equity statement. I'll go ahead and read that. Due to Oregon's history of systemic racism and with an understanding that we continue to live with systems that perpetuate inequity, the YDO works to eliminate the impacts of these injustices on young people. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause here. I don't know if there's any questions. Paul?
Yes, Abe. So there are a couple questions coming in. I appreciate those of you that are submitting them in chat. So this presentation will be put into the chat in a PDF form at the end of the presentation. So you don't have to take a bunch of notes along the way if you so choose. We'll also get it posted with the video of this recording on our website. Probably early next week on that side. A couple of questions that have come in. Will you explain the reimbursement system? So the reimbursement system is that we don't front load funds. And so you would do the work and then in your quarterly reporting would submit a claim in what's called the EGMS or electronic grant management system. And through that system, a grant manager would approve and you get reimbursement funds on that. Just to note, there is a option for some startup funds in the RFA, but you'd want to read the RFA for the details on that. With that, Abe, I'll turn it back to you. There's a few more questions coming in, so appreciate that, and we'll address it at the next pause.
Okay, so just before we get started, like kind of what Paul said, a lot of this presentation, a lot of the information is actually in the RFA, and what I'm going to be covering today is kind of like the highlights. So think of it kind of, I guess, a sports center, if you will, right? The highlights of the RFA. Let's go ahead and get into it. The eligibility. So below you see in the bullets who's eligible to apply for our grants. You have one of the 9 federally recognized tribes in the state. It can be a nonprofit organization or faith-based organization, a public benefit company that conducts business here, a mutual benefit corporation also that conducts business here in Oregon, and a county or city governmental entity here in the state. Something I want to let you know also, but if you're a nonprofit organization or a faith-based organization or a public benefit company or a mutual benefit company, you must be registered with the Oregon Secretary of State Business Registry. Here are youth grants portfolio. So you see on the left, a presentation from yesterday by Sally, the Future Ready Grants. On the right, which was a re-engagement grant, which was done by Molly a couple days ago. And here is the community investment grants. And community investment grants is really kind of an umbrella term for the initiatives you see below. You have a Youth Promise Initiative, a Youth Workforce Readiness Initiative, Solutions, and then you have a Youth Violence and Gang Prevention Initiative. And those 4 make up what we call community investment grants. So here we go, kind of, again, kind of the broadly speaking in regards to the youth community investment grants and what they are. So like I said, they're initiatives serving youth age 6 to 24 that are at risk of disengaging from school or work. The efforts funded through this grant are expected to be culturally responsive, sexual and gender identity affirming, and address various barriers to education and workforce readiness. There on the right, you can see the age range, 6 to 24, the award range, 50,000 up to 220,000. But note that the award range varies depending on the initiative, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. Here are the goals, support efforts to reduce disparities. I'm sorry, I thought there was a question there. Support efforts to reduce disparities in educational success, improve graduation and completion rates, reducing youth disconnection from school, increase school attendance and readiness, remove barriers to educational engagement, achievement, and success, encourage multi-sector collaboration to improve outcomes for youth, and provide services to children and youth in a manner that supports educational success, focuses on crime prevention, reduces high-risk behaviors, and is integrated, measurable, and accountable. Here's a first initiative. So this supports youth ages 6 to 24 for existing programming. So services that your organization may already be providing, right? So existing programming to a variety of service providers throughout the state. The Youth Promise Initiative seeks to help improve and sustain engagement in education or training so that youth may realize their academic goals. Provide program services address protective factors that prevent school disengagement, unhealthy behaviors, and criminal activities. Below you see a few examples of the types of services. A note that a lot of these that you see here, the definitions there, they are in the RFA and they are defined, a lot of them. Again, the age range 6 to 24, and there's the award range 120,000 to 220,000. Now the Workforce Readiness Initiative. Again, similar to the Promise one, this supports existing programming, not something new or something that you're trying to get off the ground or launch, but it's some services that you may already be offering. It's for ages 14 to 24, with career exploration, skill development services in preparation for entering the workforce. It's intended to support, like I said, again, existing programming services that include but are not limited to. Again, some of this is an RFA and it's defined, but work readiness instruction. This includes resume development, job interview skills. Next on the bottom there, you see one-on-one career coaching, counseling, or mentoring. hands-on career exploration, visiting places, workplace, what could be a potential place that youth may want to work maybe, and entrepreneurship training. So, teaching youth what it means to be an entrepreneur, what it takes, right? Workforce reentry services for our youth who may have had contact with the juvenile justice system, pre-apprenticeship services, and this last one really are the support services really to increase stability and retention for our workforce training program participants. And we're really focused on those that are experiencing housing instability or homelessness, or maybe currently in or exiting from foster care. Again, the age range 14 to 24, and the award range is 120,000 to 220,000. Now, I want to kind of make a distinction here because yesterday, Sally gave a presentation on the Future Ready application, and she presented this slide as well. But if you look in the middle, there are some similarities there. There is for both of them individual level data reporting. They both serve ages 14 to 24. Again, on their work readiness instruction and one-on-one career coaching, counseling, and mentoring. They both do that, right? But the Future Ready is really kind of more focused on, if you will, paid work experiences, right? And or specialized training specifically for a industry or employer recognized credential, right? And job placement and job coaching for participants, right? And this is Future Ready does have federal funds or federal reporting requirements on the Future Ready side. Right now for the CI Youth Workforce Readiness Initiative, the services may include, career exploration, right? Again, kind of what I said a little bit before, entrepreneurship training, pre-apprenticeship service, reentry services for our, juvenile justice involved youth, all right? And again, the workforce readiness, we want to kind of mention, it's kind of stability also services that go along with that, right? For youth, again, that are experiencing housing instability and or youth exiting the foster care system or in it. I like to think of it as Future Ready is more for those youth that are ready to work, right? They understand what it takes to be working already and everything before that, interviewing, what have you, right? Youth workforce readiness are those youth who are not ready to work, right? They may not be familiar with the interview process, for example, right? Just as an example. Here's a little flow chart to give you an idea to kind of help you decide where you may want to apply, right? If you're going to pay for youth wages and your program exists currently in operation or program is new or pilot programming, you probably want to go to Future Ready, right? If you don't intend to pay for youth wages and it's currently existing, then you want to go to Youth Workforce Readiness, right? Or if it's a new pilot programming, right, where you're not going to pay wages, but it's everything but, placing a youth in employment, you may want to do youth solutions, which is what I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Now, youth solutions supports youth ages 6 to 24 with risk factors leading to negative educational and workforce outcomes. And below you see some of the various different types of services that this initiative covers. So our solutions really is, for example, here you see there it's maybe for launching a new program or launching some new services, right? Or something new and innovative. Do you want to try we're thinking of doing this now, right? Or there's a need in the community and we want to fill that need, but we've never ever done it, right? It's really a good intro grant, if you will. It's also for building capacity within a program. Oftentimes for our grantees, when they apply for our grants, it helps build and get them familiar with our reporting structures and processes. It can be used for scaling up a program, systems level change work to pay for part of that, middle school age career exposure. Another important one, there's mental health and drug treatment services. That's a big one. And again, supporting youth experiencing homelessness. And at the very bottom, restorative justice practices. The age range 6 to 24, award range, it's a little less as you see there. It's 50,000 to 120,000. And the reporting may be a little different, and I'll get to that as well in regards to youth solutions. And then finally, our Youth Violence and Gang Prevention Initiative. The initiative prevents and directly supports youth ages 12 to 24 at risk of committing or being victims of gun violence and or violent crime. Services related to this grant address factors leading to or exposing youth to violent or criminal gang activity. And below are some of the services. So reentry services, youth who may have been involved with the juvenile justice system again, doing community outreach, right? Trauma-informed and mental health supports or care, providing pro-social activities, mentoring, coaching, that type of thing, and then really having a safe space for our youth. So there's some of the services. Age range 6 to 24. The award range is anywhere from 50,000 to 120,000. Here are the reporting requirements. So require biannual narrative report. So twice a year, you describe kind of the activities that are happening, any challenges, successes, progress, and promising practices. We also have a data report where we ask you for individual level data. For example, demographics, start date, end date, grades, etc. But note, if you apply for the solutions initiative, right, depending on type of programming, for example, you may not have to report on individual level, but it really depends on your programming. If you're working at a different level, let's say at a programmatic level, where you're working at a school level, for example, serving youth at a whole school. So that may be different, but that'll be determined when you meet, if awarded, with your during the work plan or project plan with your grant manager. Then you have your expenditure report, summary of pretty much your project quarterly expenses. And then we have something that's the annual data report. It's very similar to, there's similarities to the quarterly data report, but there'll be additional guidance and specific requirements as you'll be ending that year one and getting ready for year two. So the reporting may look a little different. I'll go ahead and take a break here, see if there's any questions, after any questions.
All right, Abe, thanks for running us through that. Yeah, we have quite a few questions that we'll go through and address. I'm going to start at the top while the rest of the staff continue to add questions to our document. If you haven't noticed, we are not responding directly in the chat. We are capturing that in another document shared among staff, and then we will again publish all of these responses officially as outlined in the RFA. So a couple questions. I'm going to go back up to the top. And if I answer a question or if Abe answers a question and you need more clarity, please do resubmit that into chat so that we can address that throughout this time. So one of the questions that came in is we are considering applying for community investment grant for youth who are enrolled in post-secondary programs but are experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. The question goes on to ask if youth who have diplomas or GEDs can be served in that circumstance. Community investment grants can serve youth up through 24 years of age and allow for youth who have earned a high school credential or enrolled in post-secondary education and or workforce services to receive grant-funded services or programs. So the answer is yes. Youth both who have received a high school credential or have not can be served among these grants. There was a question around reimbursement and some concerns around it. So I know there has been a strong push to reduce barriers to funding. Reimbursement makes it hard for many small RCBOs as they do not have the upfront cost to cover. Why are payments not given in advance? So the state does not provide grant funding in advance of activities being completed. That's the kind of general policy of the state. We're working on providing a more detailed explanation of the reimbursement model in the published response. I also want to just note that our RFAs do allow startup funds, which is an initial disbursement of funds prior to services being served. So there is an address. We try to address that briefly in that startup funds, but once that startup funds have been dispersed, then it does go back to reimbursement. Going to the next question, can an organization apply for more than one grant within the community investment grant? For example, 2 applications for just youth solutions. The answer is yes. Successful applicants will be required to document how multiple grants serve different programmatic and participant needs. So just keep that in mind as you're applying for the multiple grants. There was a follow-up with that to clarify multiple grant applications for different programs and different program needs may be submitted. Does this mean multiple grant applications may be submitted for the community investment grants or to all 3 of the grant programs being offered. So you can apply to all 3 of the current RFAs that are open. That different programmatic and participant needs does apply for any YDO funds received. I want to pause there, Abe, to see if there's anything that you wanted to clarify in that response.
No, that is correct. Everything you said.
All right. And then Bethany, do you mind coming on to help me with this next, and maybe Cord as well? Our special taxing districts eligible. We are a taxing district. And so I'm going to turn that over to Bethany. Well, I don't know if we need to do additional research or not, but Bethany?
Yeah, I need to do additional research. Cord did point out that there may be precedent there regarding previous grants, but I'll have to do further research and solidify that for the final Q&A document.
Perfect. Thank you, Bethany. The next question is, can a school district or ESD apply, or would we need to partner with a community agency organization? For community investment grants, yes, school districts and ESDs are eligible to apply. Can funds be used for gender-specific programs? Our after-school program serves cisgender girls, transgender girls, and gender-expansive non-binary youth. We're going to need to research that more specifically, so we'll respond to that in our Q&A document. Cord or Abe, didn't know if you wanted to add anything more to that.
I think just kind of the clear thing I think in applying is being able, because, and I'll get to the questions here in a little bit. I think that'll help answer some of the questions in regards to also being able to describe, the need, right, and the challenges that the youth you're serving face, right. That ultimately will be one of the questions, and if you can make that right, write that in your application questions, that'll kind of determine. But there's nothing that says you can't apply for our grants, right? It's up to you to be able to make the case to our grant reviewers.
Perfect. Thank you, Ed. The next question, do grants require data tracking at the individual participant level? All CI grants or community investment grants require reporting individual level data. Just a note, for some solutions initiatives, which may be more of a systems change, some aggregate level reporting is allowed in solutions only, but all of the other grants do require individual participant level data. If you do access our website, we do have some information on our current grants for the 21-23 biennium and our technical assistance pages if you want to see some more details on that information. Is the award range distributed evenly over the 2 years, or is it per year, etc.? So for our grants, and Abe, you may want to add, or Bill may want to add some more detail around the Title 20 grant specifically, but applicants submit their reimbursement request quarterly and do not need to be evenly dispersed between quarters or within a year. So when you're awarded that total amount, that is the amount that is awarded to you. There is a small exception with Title 20 funds on that. And just a note, reporting is required for all quarters of the biennium. And so as part of your grant agreement, you would be required to report even if you are not expending any funds that quarter. Abe, anything to note to that?
I was actually going to see if Bill had anything to say before I cover anything in regards to the funding and federal funding.
Perfect. Bill, I know you're scrambling on behind screen too. So, but do you have just a second to talk about Title 20?
Yeah, federal funding will look almost identical to regular funding. This biennium, we're moving to the same reporting calendar as the state grants. So looking forward to that development, as it'll reduce some of the uneven splits, as some of you who were promised grantees may have seen in the past, a 5-quarter, 3-quarter split because of the federal fiscal year versus the state fiscal year. So this year, federal funds will be on the state fiscal cycle.
Dave, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Nope, I think you covered it.
Perfect. Thanks, Bill. Again, just keep those questions coming. Appreciate them, and we're going to keep working through them. We may pause here in just a moment to go back to the presentation, but again, appreciate those questions coming in. So the question, will grants be partially awarded, or is it an all or nothing type of grant? Typically, well, the final determination is left up to YDD in terms of the amount awarded. In the past, our grants have typically been awarded at full amounts outside of some partially awarded grants to expend all funding that are within the RFA or in the initiative on that. Is it possible to combine multiple initiatives such as a workforce readiness or youth promise into one proposal? Unfortunately, that is not something that you can do. Each application must be specific to the initiative in which you're applying on that. Trying to keep track of my questions here, so apologize on the pause. If we do re-engagement programming for 14 to 24, but wish to support middle school ages through Youth Promise, would that be considered an existing program? That is a great question. So I would note that applicants can apply to CI and re-engagement RFAs both on that, but the existing program, Abe, can you go into a little bit more detail on what that might be?
I think it'll really depend on kind of the type of programming you're doing in the youth. So the difference is obviously the youth, right? Ages, right? Now you can apply in the CI, right? But I would review the requirements of each initiative, right? I think something you may want to explore more would probably the solutions initiative, given that it'd be something newer, right? But I would go back and review the details of each one, given that the existing program, meaning you've already served youth of that age group. Right. But that's kind of, the guidance I'm providing.
Perfect. Thank you, Abe. Does a request have to fit in one initiative, or can it address goals covered in two? Again, each application has to be specific to the initiative. Our Youth Promise and our Youth Solutions are the broadest of the two initiatives that will probably meet multiple goals along that way. Abe, anything to add to that?
Yeah, just kind of what you said. Basically has to be within the scope of the initiative and the intention of the initiative.
Perfect. Thank you. Next question is, if I have received funding for the last 2 summers for summer camp programs, and I want to expand those services during the school year, would that be considered existing or new? I think the response to this would be yes. Expansion of an existing program to serve more youth in more locations or operate more frequently can be considered existing and eligible for those grants within an existing program environment. The key thing to remember with the existing program is you're going to be reporting specifically on individual participant data. And so having that existing program, you know what your data will be and what the collection systems would be too. So just as a note on that existing piece. Abe, anything to add to that?
Yeah, just kind of what you said, knowing in regards to the reporting structures and what will be required. And I'll get to that in a little bit because I think it'll help clear up kind of the idea. Actually, I think I did speak about it, but in regards to a lot of the individual level data that we may be requiring, and just making sure that that you the capacity wise, right, internally. And so, yeah, just keeping that in mind.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to go through about 3 more, and then we're going to pause, and Abe, I'll send it back to you for a presentation so we can address the other questions more thoroughly before responding. Can one organization submit multiple community engagement applications? I believe that's probably community investment applications. If they were to support 2 separate programs, can we submit a Youth Promise and a Youth Solutions application? The answer to that would be yes. Again, as noted, with the serving different programmatic and participant needs. Can funds be included in the budget to pay the involved youth as student interns, either hourly or as a stipend? Programs that propose to provide paid work experiences for youth are encouraged to apply to Future Ready RFA. Any paid work experiences must pay youth the local minimum hourly wages. Stipends are not encouraged for paid work experience, but may support engagement and completion of training and other non-employment activities. I do want to pause on that to make sure that Abe or Sally on the call have, if you have any additional comments for that. All right, thank you, Sally. All right, Abe, we're good. All right.
I think we're good. I was gonna say, yeah.
All right, and the last, I'm going to do 2 more questions and then I'm going to pause. For organizations who submit multiple applications, is there a cap on how much funding an organization can be awarded from YDD? No, there is not a cap on total funding established in these RFAs, but each grant award must serve different programmatic and participant needs. And then the last question I'll address right now will be, can youth workforce readiness also support exploration of post-secondary education? And the answer to that would be yes. All right, Abe, I'm going to turn it back to you and mute here to answer a few more questions.
All right, thank you, Paul. We'll go on now and kind of go over what evaluation and review is of the grant applications, that process. So here you'll see that some of the application requirements that are not evaluated. In other words, they're not scored, right? So below you see there, and just a reminder that we'll be using our SMA online application reporting portal to submit your applications. We refer to it as SM Apply or SMA sometimes, and you can go to our website and find more information about that. But below you see bulleted there kind of the requirements that are not evaluated: applicant information and certification sheet, the organization description, the executive summary description basically of your programming, the amount you're requesting. We will be asking for a budget narrative and at least 1 letter of reference or support. There's an attachment H with an example of one there. You would be uploading that. And something to note also is a federally recognized tribe may submit letters of reference or support or partnerships from agencies within their tribe. Also note is we are not requiring you to upload, at the time of the application, you will not need to upload a budget. It's not required. We'll get to that if you're awarded, then we'll ask for that information, but you're not required to actually upload any sort of budget. I believe we do provide an example of one, but you're not required to upload or provide one. Now, these are the requirements that are scored. So these are kind of the question areas, right? Project youth, the youth population and the service area, the services and activities. There's a question about equity and access, and then also who your partners, who you're working with, collaborators, and in the community. There you see the word limit's 500 for the pretty much all of them. The questions are 500 word limit, and then you have the points also there. The youth population 30 points, service and activities 30 points, equity and access 20. The partners, collaborators, and community is also 20 points. The maximum points you can get is 100. So nice round number there. Now we do have a regional assignment of applications. So you see a map there on the left and the various numbers and various shades of gray. So various counties that are next to each other represent a region. And the region's assigned based on your business address, but you can request to change your region. And there's a deadline, which is the deadline is basically the day the grants are due, the closing date. The assigned region applies to step 1 of the application ranking. To request a change region for application rankings based on where you provide your service, not where your business address is, but where you provide your service delivery. Instead of your business address, follow the RFA procedures. And like I mentioned, by close of the RFA. The ranking of applicants. So there's a 2-step process for the ranking. So step 1 is the regional ranking. The top 2 highest scored applications per the 11 regions that meet the minimum score requirement will be awarded a grant. Then it's step 2. Then there's an all regions together ranking. Then everyone's ranked. Priority points will be assigned, and that's in the RFA. If you go to section 4, it talks a little bit more in detail about that. And the remaining applications will then collectively be ranked highest scored to lowest scored. And again, there's a section rank in RFA section 4.4 also details what that process is like. I'm going to stop here and pause for any questions.
All right, thank you, Abe. Jumping back into the questions on this, there are pieces of different initiatives that we do now. How do we integrate these pieces together as one grant, or do we need to write separate ones? I'd point you back to the specifics of each grant initiative to determine which RFA or initiative that best fits and supports your programming needs. As a reminder, applicants can apply for more than one community investment grant as long as the programs are different programmatically and are different for programmatic and participant needs. If we have drug treatment services that are existing, would Youth Promise or Youth Solutions be a better match? Just as a reminder, Youth Promise is provides services for existing programming. Youth Solutions may serve both new and existing program. So determining the best fit for that would be something I would point you back to the specifics of those programs. They are very similar in what their needs are and what they allow for services. Abe, did you have anything you wanted to add to that one?
No, I think that you
Okay.
covered everything. But
Perfect. Our
Hey, Paul,
for-profit.
I
Oh,
apologize.
sorry, Cord. Thank you,
I
Cord.
actually have a question about that. I was looking at that one, and it occurred to me that a program like that, individual level data reporting could be a challenge, particularly around, you know, behavioral health or
Very good point.
or addiction services, things of that nature. And my understanding is that, and I think this may lead to another question I was just looking at, that solutions does not require individual level reporting, whereas Promise does, if I'm not mistaken. So we should probably provide the final answer on this one in the writing, but I wanted to flag that there are certain kinds of services where individual level data, because of the nature of the service, could be really challenging to provide. And that might actually lead to some different guidance for those types of services. And this is it's just occurring to me that that's something we should actually work on and come up with a clear answer.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that, Cord. So just as a kind of a little caveat to that, and Abe, you may want to add, or Bill, add to this. So Youth Promise is and does require individual participant data. Youth Solutions, that's our starting point, is to collect that. And then if, when you're working with successful applicants working with their grant manager to establish the grant, if there is different needs, that's what we direct you to the Youth Solutions for in terms of that data reporting, whether it be systematic or, as Cord indicated, it may not be able to provide individual data level participant data based on the services that you're providing. Abe or Bill, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I can just add, we're getting a couple questions around new and existing programs in solutions. And so it's the answer to that is yes, you can be new or existing and be eligible for solutions. The primary caveat that one should consider in thinking about appropriateness of solutions is ability to collect the individual level data. If whatever programming you're offering may serve, I think Abe provided an example that we call system level change. So maybe you're doing school-wide behavior modification programs that really work at a systemic level. That type of programming doesn't lend itself to collecting individual level data. There are also some restrictions around information that can be shared for, say, youth in certain type of medically designated programming, like perhaps drug and alcohol programming may be protected. There's certain other protections of data that may come in, as Cord referenced, that may make it hard to report individual level data, even if it can be collected. And that would be a consideration for solutions as well. So really it's the ability to collect individual level data. And that's what I wanted to add.
Perfect. Thank you, Bill. Bethany, this may be a question for you, so if you can sign on. The question is, are for-profit organizations eligible to apply for the grants at all? And I do point you back to the RFA eligibility requirements, as well as if you have specific questions regarding that, to contact the SPC, which is Bethany, for these grants. Bethany, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I would have to review more closely the RFA eligibility, as you mentioned. I don't know if Cord has anything to add to that, but at this time, I'd have to do additional research.
All right, Cord?
I agree with that. We should do our research and respond.
Perfect. Thank you. There was just a note for colleagues for potential collaboration, whether on this grant opportunity or in the future. It would be great to see your organization in addition to your name. So if you do want to respond to that, what I would ask is if you could actually go in and change your name in the Zoom profile so it comes up with your organization, just so that we don't fill chat. But again, totally comfortable with that if you want to go in and change your name to list your organization. The Youth Workforce Program, flow chart that you shared seems to infer that if we are not using YDD funds to pay youth wages for an existing program, that we must apply for youth workforce readiness rather than future ready. Can you confirm if this is accurate? Programs that would pay youth wages are encouraged to apply for the future ready RFA, as this grant is specifically designed and legislatively directed to provide this activity. Workforce readiness grants do not require paid work experience, job placement, or credential planning, and are appropriate for work readiness, career exploration, stabilization, and or other training activities. Abe or Sally, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think really kind of the focus, like I said, the focus is in regards to the way I thought of it really is workforce readiness is for those youth who are not yet ready to work, right? And everything that goes along with that. And the future ready is for those that are ready to get placed in a job. I don't know if you want to add some more, Sally, more detail to that.
Yeah, the only other piece I would add is that Future Ready does have space for youth to be paid potentially a stipend while they go through the training that would result in the industry recognized credential. But that the other two core activities within Future Ready are paid work experiences or job placement with job coaching, and both of those we would expect that the youth would be paid for their work. So it's really just if there is the credentialing that is part of the grant applicant's proposal, that there wouldn't be an expectation that there would be paid wages on an hourly basis for the youth.
Perfect. Thank you. Going back to the questions. Can county agency have a contracted partner come in to provide services such as mental health or drug treatment and pay for those services with the grant funds? The answer to that would be yes. Subrecipients of funding are permitted and partners may be identified to provide services under CI grants. Just a note with that and regarding subrecipients do need to meet the insurance requirements as outlined on the grant agreement. We are providing and working with Department of Justice currently to provide more guidance on that, which should be available here in the next month or so. Cord, did you want to make any note on the insurance since I brought that piece up?
I appreciate you bringing it up. Yes, we've identified that the insurance requirements sort of require their own unpacking, I think, especially if you have not previously received a grant from ODE or the state of Oregon. So we are, as mentioned, we're working with so the Department of Administrative Services risk analysts determine the insurance requirements for state contracts and grants, and we are working with them on a Q&A document just covering insurance. We actually are meeting tomorrow to go over a draft of it, and our plan is to publish it as an addendum to the RFAs, ideally before the end of March. So we want to have it out while the RFA is open, just so folks can see that information and explore any questions they have around insurance with their insurance provider. Thanks, Paul.
Awesome. Thank you, Court. Let's see, going back to the questions here for individual data tracking, must we have access to students' academic records, or can we use alternative education methods like pre and post surveys? The response to that would be you do not need access to student academic records as part of the community investment grants. You should be able to provide individual demographic data and general information on education and employment services, our status that may require some sort of intake or post exit survey on that. Abe or Bill, do you have anything to note with that?
I think it's kind of what you said, Paul. A lot of it's more basic in regards to individual level data. For example, if they made it from 1 year, 1 grade to they progress a grade, for example, after a year of services, for example. Another one, for example, might be, are they employed or are they not employed? Just these are examples of something in type of some of the individual level reporting that may occur, right? Along with any demographic information as well. You want to add, Bill?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The majority of the individual level data report is what's called demographic data. Seeing this pop up a couple times in the questions as well. I just want to draw the distinction between individual level data and personally identifiable information, also known as PII. We will never require PII to be transmitted through non-secure means, which is email. So no names are required to be reported. We use a youth ID. That ID cannot be, say, a social security number, driver's license, or secure student identifier, which is called the SSID. Those are all considered personally identifiable information. So that's an important distinction. We do not require PII. And that was the main thing I wanted to jump in and mention in support of that.
All right, thank you, Bill. The next question here is, can youth solution grants be used for existing programs? This response would be yes on that. I think we've talked a little bit more in detail throughout the presentation on that. Can Youth Promise be used for system level work or only individual level? So Bill, you may have a little bit more to add, but I think the answer would be yes. But just as a reminder that Youth Promise does require individual participant level data reporting. And so that would be a capacity question in terms of whether or not that would be applicable to your system level work. Bill or Abe, did you have anything to note on that?
I think you covered it. Yeah, in the system level work, it's kind of the challenges. Are you able to keep track of all the individuals impacted by the system level work, right? And that could be a lot. Oftentimes system level work at serving a larger group of youth. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of youth, and the capacity to report the impact of whatever work you've done on each individual youth over the 2-year period. So that's something, I don't know if you want to add something, Bill.
No, I think that's covered. The basic is typically system level work, and some of these again it's a different level of aggregation of the data, and so that is why system level work would typically fit in the solutions category is because the individual level data is expansive and often not able to be collected at that level.
Perfect. So Abe, I'm going to go ahead and pause. I want to note the time. We're at 9:55. We do want to make sure that if people need to sign off at 10 o'clock, we are allowed to do that. So we want to conclude the presentation before then. YDD staff will remain online, and we will go through all questions as they're posted verbally for whatever time that does take. So Abe, I'm going to turn it back to you, and then we'll come back to answer questions once you've been able to conclude the presentation.
All right. I'll try to do this here really quickly here. So how to apply. So again, like I mentioned before, we use SM Apply or SurveyMonkey Apply web portal. It's an online platform, and you kind of navigate through it. There's a website there. It's also on the RFA and on our website. And you can find resources related to it. Basically, if you want to know how to do something in SM Apply, we also have a link to take you to a frequently asked questions page on our website. Anything from registering, by registering as an applicant, basically setting up an account to be able to access all the various grant opportunities that we offer through the website, how to reset your password, how to submit an application, how to navigate within the web portal or the platform itself, SM Apply. So I recommend you take a look at that if you've never used SM Apply. Here's a quick, just a screen cap here of what it looks like when you're in there as an applicant. There are 4 tasks in SM Apply. You can see them there. This one here, if you notice, they all have green check marks next to them, right? That means you've completed all the tasks. What I want to make sure and kind of let you know is the person that can submit the application is a person who created the application. They're the ones who can submit it once all the tasks complete. Just because you're complete doesn't mean that you've submitted the application. You actually have to hit that green submit button there they have circled in red. So at the end, be sure to hit that green submit button. You'll get an email confirming that the application has been submitted. If you have any questions and don't receive an email or just want to make sure, you can always reach out to the SPC listed on the front of the RFA. You want to pause here, Paul?
Looking at the time, I'd go ahead and just run through it. And then again, for those that are on the call, we will remain on the call, and YDD staff will address all questions that have been submitted verbally before ending the presentation. So Abe, if you want to wrap up, then we'll come back to questions.
Here are some important dates here. Obviously, we're at the top there, March 16th. We'll be having a pre-application conference also for our sovereign nations on March 21st. April 5th is when all questions, requests for clarifications are due. In case you think of anything after this in the next few days, please submit it to our SPCs. Then the answers will be issued on April 12th. That's approximate right there. You have till the close of RFA to request a change in your region. For example, you may be your business address may be in one location, but your actual services are in a different location, which may mean it may be in a different region. You may want to make that request. All applications are due May 1st, 5:00 p.m. Please don't wait till the last minute to submit. You may not get it through, just to let you know. There's a notice of intent to award July 1st, approximate. And then the award protest period ends 7 calendar days after the notice of intent to award. And that wraps up our presentation. Thank you all for joining our presentation today and for all the questions as well.
All right, sounds good. Looks like it's back to me then, huh, Abe?
Yeah,
I don't get any more pauses. That's right.
Yeah.
We'll rock through.
Good luck to all of you.
All right, so going back to the questions, again, keep submitting the questions as you are. If you do need to sign off, we understand on that. All these questions and responses will be posted on our website after with formal responses. So going back to the questions, funding these programs is large. A serious concern our organization has is the ongoing funding after 2025. Will there be funding for the future so we don't have to end a program because of loss of funding? So pointing you back to these grants support programming from July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2025. A similar competitive RFA process will be conducted for funding in the 25-27 biennium. How much is the startup distribution? Startup distribution may not exceed 15% of the total grant award. Can Youth Promise grant be used through a school district organization for after-school programs? Yes, it can. Just a note on the individual participant reporting requirements as part of Youth Promise. So to confirm, can an agency apply for 2 or more Youth Promise grants? Yes, successful applicants, just as a reminder, with multiple awards will be required to demonstrate how those multiple awards serve different programmatic and participant needs. Sorry, going back, I'm having to read the question here. So can an agency apply for Youth Promise to support existing programming as well as the youth solutions to also expand the programming? Yes, but pointing you back to that, it would need to be different programmatic and participant need. So you'd want to be very aware of that if you're expanding programming for that same piece. I want to pause there. Abe, I don't know if you want to add some more detail to that.
Paul, could I just throw in that it would be a good time to drop in the slide deck?
Thank you. Abe, do you have a PDF that you could do that while I continue answering questions so I don't have to pause?
Let me see if I have a PDF. Give me a moment.
Okay, actually, I'll do it right now. I think I might be able to do it right now. Give me a second.
Okay, I was going to say on that previous question, just keep in mind, if you're applying for multiple grants, I guess what I want to say is don't apply for one grant assuming you're going to get another grant. Just kind of putting that out there because in the past, we have seen applicants try to do something like that, and they may have only got awarded one grant, but they needed this other piece of a grant, right? And so it really kind of makes it really challenging for a grantee, right? But just kind of want to make sure that our grantees keep that in mind.
Perfect. And Abe, I was able to pull that over into the chat. So those of you who are still on the call, I did put the PDF of this information session into the chat. Please download that. We will also get posted on the website here in the next few days. Going back to the questions, between Youth Promise and Youth Solutions, which historically do you find to be more competitive based upon funds available and applications submitted? Unfortunately, we're not really able to comment on the competitiveness of the grant. Can say that in all applications that we had in the previous biennium, we had more than we had more applications and requests than what we had allowed or what we had to allocate. So I would find that most of our categories will be, if not all, highly competitive. Many of the youth in our community have experienced discrimination and other forms of oppression in the school system, and we have therefore opted to begin homeschooling. We are a space where they can spend time while their parents, caretakers are at work. We will most likely be applying for youth violence and gang prevention grant to help fund our community center as a positive safe space for youth. Does this funding preclude support for homeschooled youth? Homeschool youth may be served by YDD grants, as can youth in alternative, private, virtual, or charter schools. Students do not need to be enrolled in school at all to be served by these funds. Is there a minimum number of youth required to be in the programs or benefited from the programs to qualify for grants? The answer to that would be no, there is not a minimum number of youth to be served. However, just to note, successful applicants will need to report on all funds expended as part of the grant on a quarterly basis. So you would tie the amount spent during your quarterly or yearly reporting. For our type of organization, receiving federal funds triggers state action where we need to comply with non-discrimination policies, etc. Does receiving the state funds have the same effect? For example, we offer a scholarship specifically for the Latinx students that might not fit non-discrimination rules. YDD grants may provide culturally specific services. We will provide a more written response in more detail on how grantees should comply with non-discrimination requirements under state and federal funds. And just to note that some of these funds are federal as well as general funds from the state. On that side, Bill, or Cord, did you want to add anything regarding those federal funds?
I'm glad I have to jump off to another meeting, but I really appreciate everyone joining us today. It's an amazing variety of questions. And I will pass it back to Bill to respond, and I'll see you all later. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Cord.
What I can say is that in the past, we've had gender-specific programming elevated through ODE's legal team, and have found that there are, in most cases, it is allowable. There are a few cases where it may not be, but would need to just confirm that this is also the current understanding. So I think we need to seek more guidance specifically on that, but typically it's been allowable.
Sounds good. Thank you, Bill. Okay, going back to the questions, is a program that serves only 25 youth less competitive than those serving large numbers of youth under Youth Promise? The number of youth served is not specified as a factor in the scoring of grants, as the type, length, and breadth of services to youth may vary widely among grants. Applicants should be clear on how requested funding would be used to serve an anticipated number of participants. With regard to youth solutions, I see this needs to be a new program. Are we able to ask for support if the program might start before learning if we are awarded for funds? We don't have the official timeline set, but want to know what restrictions there might be with timing. Solutions does not have to be a new program, but new programs are required to apply for solutions. Solution grants can cover existing system level programming or existing programming that does not lend itself to reporting individual data. To add to that, if programming starts before, so funding for the successful applicants does not begin until July 1, and so all services that were before July 1 could not be claimed as part of the grant expenses. So, but all billing would refer back to the July 1, 2023 start date of these grants. Abe and Bill, I'm going to continue rolling, but if you have more to add, please make sure just to pause me. All right, sounds good. Again, we're going to work to address all questions. So if you do need to sign off, we understand. Do family-based projects count for youth solutions? For example, family classes for reduction of ACEs and improving family communication for a household to take in unison qualify. So Abe, I'm going to put that back to you. We may need to do some more research, but
it may be a little bit more research, but I will say if you can, and again, you got to be able to demonstrate it in your grant application because it asks about youth. Primarily, our grant application is primarily focused on youth, but we do understand, right, the focus and the importance of family, right? Kind of a simple analogy, right, is if a youth doesn't have a roof over their head and food, right? I don't think school right now is a priority. Let's get a roof and food first, then we can worry about school, right? But just keep in mind, you will be scored according to what the criteria are in the questions, right, of the RFA. So keep that in mind if you do apply for the grant.
Perfect. Thank you, Abe. How extensive is the individual data collection required under Youth Promise? The 21-23 biennial data report is currently on the YDO technical assistance page. For reference, we don't anticipate huge changes within that data set, but again, that would give you some reference for it if you're considering to apply. Youth solutions can be the grant, or can the grant be focused on parents and school staff that will affect youth because of tools, resources, training the adults around the youth will receive? Yes, solutions grants can be used for systems-based change and training. Will collecting individual level data, can the individual data be a student identifier rather than the student name? The YDO will never require personally identifiable information, PII, to be reported through non-secure channels. Names are not required currently to be in this report. A student's secure student ID or SSID is considered PII and cannot be reported as a youth ID. And Bill, I think you've already addressed that a little bit. I saw a thumbs up, so I'm assuming I got that one right. All right, perfect. To clarify, can an organization apply for 2 Youth Promise grants if they serve different populations? One program is focused on literacy tutoring for elementary students, and one program is focused on mentoring for high school students. The response to that would be yes. I appreciate you identifying the 2 distinct programming. I heard Paul state that youth solutions can be for new or existing programs. Did I hear correctly? Yes, you did hear that statement correctly. They can be used for new or existing programs. Do you have to serve different populations if you apply for multiple grants, or can you submit multiple applications to serve the same populations? So applying, you can apply for any of the grants that best meet your programming needs. If you are a successful applicant, you would be required to demonstrate how the programs and the funds that you were awarded serve different programmatic or the youth needs. I also want to mention how this presentation demonstrates what an excellent YDD team you have. I'm impressed with the exchanges between. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. That's a nice question to post in there. So thanks, Bill, for copying that over. To clarify what Cord is saying, if we are providing MH or mental health or behavior services and we cannot provide the individual names data, is YDD going back to the drawing board to see if there can be an exception for Youth Promise to make that exception? Unfortunately, we do need to stay consistent with the requirements for the reporting identified in the RFA. So promise grants should be, a promise grant awardee should be able to provide individual level data, while solutions grants can offer an exception to this requirement. And just to kind of further clarify, solutions is the only grant initiative in CI that can allow that flexibility for that. Next question. Sorry, I'm going to make sure I'm going through these accordingly. What I'm wondering is if an organization received funding for the same program under 2 different state grants, say this grant and a summer grant, would the org decline one of the grant awards? Grant funds must be used for unique activities, and costs associated to another state grant may not be allocated to this one. I would say that would be something that we would also have to look at and discuss should you be a successful applicant in this process. Anything to add to that? I do want to pause just to breathe for a sec, but Abe, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would have to say in regards to the way funds are used, we'd have to take a look at that. That's why I think what you said there, we'd have to have a conversation around how funds are being used and where they're going to specifically. I think that's kind of what it'll come down to.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Does the youth grant provide funding for age 6 through 24, or is it just Youth Solutions grant that applies to that age group? Youth Promise does provide funding for ages 6 through 24. So Youth Promise and Youth Solutions are both that broad age range. Can organizations apply for smaller grants than the full range? There is a minimum amount in the range that is allowable for each grant. So please review the lower side of those grants award ranges when requesting. How many letters of support can an agency submit? So Abe, correct me if I'm wrong, but CI requires 1, but we can go ahead and you can upload as many as you wish as an organization. Is that correct?
You're correct. Just keep in mind that your letters of support aren't being scored. Just to let you know, no one's actually, I don't want to say no one, but they will not be scored or taken into account when it comes to scoring your grant.
All right. And someone just asked for the PDF. If you wouldn't mind scrolling back up into the comments, there should have been submitted in there, so I can keep moving on the questions. And also to note that the PDF of this presentation will be posted on our website here in the next couple of days. Going back to the questions, does an individual level data need to track graduation rate? Educational status at entry and exit a program should be tracked. So if a youth is enrolled in high school at the start and not enrolled but earned a diploma at the end would be an example of that. And those are drop downs in our reporting currently. Can you clarify, do the future ready stipends leading to certification must be minimum wage? I am going to ask Sally or Abe if that is a question that you might be able to respond to. And Sally, did you hear the question or you need me to repeat it?
Sorry, say that again.
Do the future ready stipends leading to certification must they be minimum wage?
Yes and no. So if it is, if the work is performed on an hourly basis, then yes, it must comply with minimum wage requirements. They're specific to where you are in the state. If the stipend is awarded for a specific project that's been completed, such as a credential, then we would ask that it be paid at an amount that would be appropriate and would likely be similar in general amount to minimum wage, but it would not be specifically tied to minimum wage. So if one youth takes a little bit longer to complete a credential than another youth, the youth who takes longer, it wouldn't make sense to pay that person more. There, and so a stipend should not be used in place of hourly wages. If the work is being completed on an hourly basis, it does need to be paid at minimum wage. If it is a stipend for completion of a training, it would not be specifically correlated to minimum wage.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm glad you answered that. Not me. You said it a lot better than I can. All right, so our program provides agricultural education, work readiness, skill training, and leadership training. Stipends are paid for summer participation. Improvement is measured by pre-post survey. Is that enough data collection? Does that fit under work readiness or youth promise? Again, pointing us back to the individual participant data. Bill, youth promise and youth workforce do require that. Do you feel like a pre-post survey maybe, or would we need more information?
So this is a bit of a tricky question. Pre-post test data is acceptable as individual level data, i.e., reporting there's a single row pre-post test score, but it would not alone suffice as the entire requirement for individual level data. For example, gender, race, ethnicity, date of birth, and then the status at start, which includes educational status and employment status, which is kind of like what grade are they in if they're in school, what's their status if they're out of school, and then employment status includes stuff like paid internship, part-time, full-time, and not employed. So that's kind of a nutshell of the type of things that would need to accompany the pre and post test. And if you're able to track pre and post tests for individual level youth, it's usually you can do the other stuff as well.
All right, thank you, Bill. So this next question is around insurance requirements and that they can be very excessive. And so just to note, yes, we recognize that there has been some insurance challenges along the way. Again, this question is pretty specific, I think, to the organization. We are working to provide some guidance on that. And our intent is to get that out as soon as possible in conjunction with Department of Justice. The thing I want to note in this question mainly is that yes, awarded grant funds can be used to pay for your insurance requirements to support this work. All right. Thanks for all those that are holding on. We still got quite a few on the call, so we'll keep running through this. In Youth Promise, if we are doing system level work, can we identify multiple sites throughout the system that would provide the individual level data required? Yes, you can have multiple sites, just as a reminder. So any youth that are being served by that system level work would need to be included in your individual participant data as part of Youth Promise. Does Youth Violence and Gang Prevention Initiative need to be for an existing program, or can it fund a new program? Abe, I'm going to turn that over to you. I'm not sure the answer.
I don't think there's a requirement in there, and whether it's new or existing. Like I said, again, you do have to be able to make the case in the youth population, and that they meet, kind of they're in need, right, of the services provided, right, and why they're be able to explain why they're at risk of being victims or committing a violent crime or activity.
Perfect. Thank you. So next question is, so a recipient will need to have proof of insurance coverage. Is that correct? Yes, a subrecipient does have to submit proof of insurance at time of the grant agreement for it to be executed. If you do look at attachment B, I believe, which is our grant sample grant agreement, it will have the insurance requirements outlined as we anticipate it for this biennium. Bethany, did you have more to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to mention that while the subrecipients are required to have the same insurance that's required in the grant, myself as procurement and ODE does not require proof be provided to us. It is the grantee's responsibility to ensure that subrecipients have the appropriate coverage.
Thank you for checking my work. I appreciate that. I missed that. So as a contracted grant writer, can I create an account for the applicant organization? Abe, I believe that's an SM Apply question, so I'm going to point that to you.
Yeah, actually, that's fairly common. Right now, there is a certification, meaning that the organization that you're submitting it and that you can't submit it on their behalf. There is a question that you have to attest to it, right? Just to let you know. So yeah, it's not uncommon.
Perfect. And just a note, if I remember correctly, SM Apply requires the person who created that account in SM Apply to be the submitter. Is that correct? Okay.
You are correct.
All right.
And just to mention something that applies here too, in the past, there's been a distinction between individual applicant and an organizational applicant. I believe the organizational applicant option has been removed, so you don't apply as an organization, but as an individual on behalf of an organization.
That is correct.
Thank you. Are the community investment grants offered every year, or is this a one-time opportunity? Community investment grants are biennial or 2-year grants that are offered every 2 years contingent on funding approved by the legislature. They are aligned with the state fiscal calendar, and so they run that July 1 to June 30 on odd number of years. These community investment grants have been long time established grants for the Youth Development Oregon. Can a collaborator on an account submit the application, or does it have to be the one who created the account? Hey, Bill, you answered the question before we even got to it. So the person that creates the account on SM Apply must be the one that officially submits that on that. So please do make sure that that is that you are aware of that. Could an organization receive more than 15% for startup funds? The response to that would be unfortunately not. As outlined in the RFA, it's a maximum of 15% for startup funds. If an award is late, will it be backdated to July 1? Yes, our intention is for grant agreements to have a start date of July 1, 2023, although the actual distribution and execution of grant agreements could be delayed beyond that July 1 timeframe. Startup may not be up to 15% of the word. I'm not sure what that question is. So if you're still on the call, please do let me or put a comment in chat. All right. Is there a percent not to exceed of total budget for solutions? Again, I'm not quite sure what that question is. We do have minimum and maximum awards for solutions. Abe, do you know the minimum maximum right offhand for solutions?
Not off the top of my head, but it is
Okay.
in the RFA and
Perfect.
in the presentation. Obviously.
Sounds good. I thought I read in the RFA that there is potential to have funding continue beyond 2 years for the CI grant. Please clarify, as I heard Paul say otherwise. Yes, there is language in the RFA on that that would allow that should that circumstance come about, but we have done a competitive grant cycle every 2 years in the biennium, and that's a standard kind of template language that are included in the RFAs. Bethany, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I'm sorry, to be totally honest, I was answering one of the questions down lower, so I missed what we were just talking about.
No, and I do appreciate you guys answering these questions as I'm trying to talk. So going back to the questions, I thought I read in the RFA that there is a potential to have the funding continue beyond 2 years for CI grant. Please clarify, as I heard Paul say otherwise. My understanding is yes, that is language that is in the RFA, but these are typically and will continue to be competitive grant cycles every 2 years. Do you have anything to add to that?
Nope, nothing to add.
Perfect, thank you. Any examples of system change possibilities based on what has been awarded in the past? Some examples include district-wide training on positive behavior interventions, restorative justice programs, serving one or more schools, or an organization's collaboratives to establish new services in an area. Would be a couple examples for that. Just as a note too, you can also see all of our current awards for the 21-23 biennium on our website and see those narratives in that on the website as well for more detail on some of our prior awardees. Thank you very much for the presentation. I wanted to let you know that there are some non-functional pages on the Youth Development Grants website. It would be very helpful to have PDF presentations emailed out rather than spending time trying to find the documents. Thank you on that. So it appears our website is having some issues this week. We've noticed periodic outages on our website. We apologize for the inconvenience, and we will hope to have that restored soon. I'm trying to see this other response. And unfortunately, we'll need to post all of our information on the website to make sure that we are following the RFA processes and access to all of the information.
Paul, sorry to
ahead.
interrupt. There was a question that looks like it got skipped, but the question is, what is the limit on indirect costs?
Thank you. I accidentally blew that out. So I believe our indirect limitation is up to 15%, unless you have a federally indirect rate of higher than that, then you'd provide documentation for it and it would allow that to go above. Checking, because I answered that straight off the top of my head. So checking Bill or Bethany, am I correct?
Yes, if you, and I don't mean to jump in on Bethany, but you're right that the federally negotiated rate can override that. It may not technically be what accountants understand as an indirect rate because it's a percentage of the total grant, not of the grant funds or specifically used funds. So, but yeah, 15% max.
Perfect.
Otherwise.
Nothing to add on my part.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. I can see the bottom of the question. So again, appreciate everybody hanging on here. Is there planning time allowed to start up a new program under Youth Solutions? Yes, that would be worked out with your assigned grant manager during the formulation of the work project plan, which is a deliverable within 45 days. Wow, I must be getting to the bottom of this list. Apologize. So the short answer to that is yes, and that would be something that you would work out with your grant manager if you were a successful applicant. Who do we direct additional questions to during the application writing? That would be the single point of contact listed on the RFA. that you need to direct those specifically to. Can for-profits apply for funds? Can they be subcontracted by a nonprofit? We're going to go ahead and we need to research that for-profits piece. So if you do have a specific question on that, please email that directly to our single point of contact. We will need to determine whether or not for-profit can apply for their grants, right? On that, in terms of subcontracting, as long as it's meeting the requirements of that, I believe that is something that requirements of the grant, I believe that is something that is acceptable. Bethany, did you have anything to add to that?
Nope.
Perfect. And then for solutions, I'm wondering if the award needs to be 15% or less, or if this is only for the startup fund. Solutions, again, I think somebody may have just add that question.
Yeah, Paul, I think I can take a shot at this. So
perfect.
The range of the solution awards, I believe, is $50,000 to $120,000. So as long as you're within that range, that's the award. And then your startup is maxed out at 15% of whatever the amount is that you're applying for. So let's just say in that 50 to 120,000 range, you apply for 100,000, 15% of that would be 15,000, which you're eligible to ask for as startup money.
Thank you, Bill, on that. All right, with that, we are at the end of the questions list that I've seen submitted. Oh, looks like we may have just had a question submitted. Let me read it here for a second. So Heather will work on responding to that. So the question is, after meeting with you over the year, will distribution work in a different manner? Distribution, I believe, is through the request for reimbursements through EGIMS, and then that funds would come out through however EGIMS sends that funds out, which I believe is primarily direct deposit. Heather, I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Paul?
Yes.
Yeah, let me rephrase that. Sorry. No, I was just thinking about how more we were talking how over the last year, how we were talking, how it seemed like most of the awards were like in the west portion of Oregon, or maybe Portland area, where we're Central Oregon, and it didn't feel like the awards were, other than those, what was it, like the top applicant of the region. So if you had found any solutions to distributing grants throughout regions more equally.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for the clarification. So as Abe outlined in the presentation, the regional award is the first step, and then it does go to that statewide award. There has been a few adjustments made in that process itself. In terms of, for example, CI is now awarding 2 regional awards as part of that initial regional award process. But other than that, that's as outlined in the RFA. All right, there's a couple other questions coming through. The indirect funds. So is there a description of indirect funds? Yes, I believe that's attachment D, which has an example of our expenditure report that would explain where indirect funds are and the definition for that. All right. I'm going to go ahead and pause, see if any more questions come in, and then we'll give it just a minute, and then we'll end the meeting. All right. So Melissa and Jessica, I believe we can go ahead and looks like there's no more questions being submitted. So we can go ahead and start dismissing non-YD staff from the meeting.